Welcome back to another episode of the Mana Daily Podcast. Today, I am rejoined with one of my favorites, Craig Harguess from the Bad Roman Podcast. Also has a bit of a side business with making some Bad Roman salsa. Highly recommend. It looks appetizing as heck. I'm just waiting for more to accrue more funds so I can make myself a purchase. Maybe get some organic chips to have with it. Craig, I had other people who were asking me questions of what is statism and what is anarchy and how is this relevant in a Christian's life? And of course, since this is more your bread and butter and field of emphasis of ministry, I kind of wanted to pick your brains on some questions that I forwarded to you. First of all, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I always enjoy getting to speak with you, even if it's through text. And I've been, super busy and been pretty swamped, so I don't get a chance to interact with you as much as I'd like. But this is cool getting to see you and getting to hear your voice again, getting to talk to you again.
Yeah. I totally like picking your brain, dude, because there's not many people that get where I'm coming from. Is when I bash one side, it doesn't automatically mean I love the other side. And one of the few people, it's like I can have a conversation of rationality of I don't support any of them, no king but Christ. Like, how hard is this for people to grasp? If you could give your definition of statism, or in contrast of Christianity, I would appreciate that, or what a Christian is supposed to be in contrast of what a statist is.
A statist is somebody who seeks authority from somebody else to rule over them and their neighbor. They feel like it is necessary to have somebody in line to put, I guess, to keep the bad people out. But the problem is what they're doing is they're putting all the bad people into power over us and our neighbors and themselves. Excuse me. And as far as statism, I mean, a lot of people are going to describe it different, but it's just basically it's a belief in a system that is contrary to the teachings of Jesus. If you look at anything that the state does, anything that the state is about, how they operate is completely antithetical to the teachings of Christ. And there's absolutely no excuse for a Christian to be involved with it.
Well, I was even adding to that statism is basically antichrist. What do I mean by that? Well, you're putting a substitute before Christ.
Yes.
If you're saying Christian nationalism and you're going to go by the order of the president, well, it's like you're no better than the Catholic that goes by the edicts of the Pope.
Yeah.
I don't care what you're doing there. You can't just put Christian frosting over it and say you're the good guy. It's no, I'm a saint, which means I'm set apart from this world. And if you're still defending either political party, the institution of government itself, you're a statist.
Yeah.
And that's just the rough facts. So,
well, you're absolutely right. It is antichrist. Everything about the state is antichrist. We if you get into like dispensationalist type thinking, they're looking for a central figure to be the antichrist, but no, it's just the government. All of the government is antichrist to Jesus. It's antichrist. It's not. It's in place of. You're putting somebody in power when you already have a king.
Exactly. I've been reading, based off your recommendations, Jacques Ellul.
Yes.
Binging through his books like crazy. Yeah.
This is a very small book. This is, and I haven't even had time to read through it all, but he's been very influential on me over the past at least year. I mean, I knew about him, heard about him, but Jacques Ellul was one of my go-tos, especially for somebody. This is kind of like to me, what I've read so far is a primer. It's a very, if anybody listening to this want to go through something very easily to get an understanding of anarchy and Christianity, Jacques Ellul nails it down. And it's a basic understanding. You're going to have people who've been doing this for a while that might read it and be like, well, I know all this, but
right.
I like to read it just, to kind of refresh my mind sometimes too.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that's is looking into this, pick that book up.
Or even anything part of his series. And that's Christian Anarchy, right? And Anarchy? Or
it's Anarchy and Christianity by Jacques Ellul. I got this off of Amazon. It's called the Jacques Ellul Legacy Series.
Yeah, a lot of them. He has another one on violence, political illusions, was it something of cities, where they come from and where they're going. I think he even made a book, and I want to pick this one up, is describing that the beast in Revelation is government, and he was making a very interesting case, I think, towards the end of that particular book. I just finished it up a couple days ago. But I was like, yeah, I can see what he's talking about. It's not something where it's like, that's kind of fringe, it's kind of meh. It's like, no, I think there's a lot of validity towards that. Not to mention, government means mind control.
Right.
So, and by the way, that for folks who are wondering what I'm meaning by that, I'm serious. Govern means to control ment of mind. So mind control is literally what you're supporting when you're going to the institution of government. So I wanted to ask you some questions because a lot of people, like, they'll scoff, they'll say, like, anarchy is chaos, you have no system of order, structure of, like, even if you wanted to create a utopia, go off grid, whatever, you don't have a structure of any sort. What is anarchy, applicationally speaking, outside of the I just don't vote category, or I don't support rulers of men?
I mean, you know that I do a lot of farmers markets, and I see anarchy all over the place out of these farmers markets. You know, it's the same. It's a philosophy where I think voluntarism is really kind of like putting it into action. I might get pushback from anarchists on that, but that's the way I see it, because out of these farmers markets, you're seeing people interacting voluntarily. There's no government involved with it. Hell, I'll go out there and trade with people. You know, people are paying cash. I probably shouldn't say this out loud because it's me on YouTube, but they're paying cash. It's just between me and that person. You know, I saw there was a guy, he had a booth set up, and I bought this little thing of it to just add it to my water to help with my my decongestion. He had a sign. It said, choose plants, not pharma. To me, that's anarchy.
Yes.
You know, and I don't know if all these people out there understand that they're participating in anarchy, but they are. You know, they may have the wrong idea of what anarchy is. You know, it's not chaos. Where, to me, anarchism is more orderly than statism is. Statism is chaos.
It's natural, as opposed to seeking a corporation or a structure where we give the means of production, as Marx would phrase it. And again, I'm just saying, even capitalism is like, oh, we're going to use our military-industrial complex to do a banana war and put food on the shelf for you. Yeah. It's more of I'm going to barter and trade with my neighbor. Is that what you'd kind of say?
Yeah, that's absolutely what it is. It's just anarchy is the absence of state coercion, is the absence of the state. It doesn't mean that, like, if you have an anarchist society, a voluntary society, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be rules. There's going to be rules, you know, and you're going to have to be asked to follow it. And one of the questions I get from people too, well, what about the police? Well, what about the police? Nobody said that in an anarchist society there wouldn't be some kind of security force either. The difference is they would be more beholden to the society, the community, than they would to a crooked politician. And they wouldn't be stealing money from you to pay their to fund the police. You know what I'm saying? It would be done voluntarily within the community, because, you know, people are going to want that. Some people are going to want that, and that's okay.
Well, warrior in a sense. That's what I kind of try to describe to a lot of people. It's a warrior mentality of, I'm going to guard the women and children of the village, or even like the Israelite tribes. I'm guarding my portion of the wall, so we're not attacked while we're just trying to rebuild the city, right?
Right, and people need to stop pretending that anarchy is a new idea. Mm-hmm. It's not. We were born. Every one of us were born anarchist. Everybody was. Just somewhere along the way, we get brainwashed. There's propaganda in the school systems. There's propaganda in the churches. There's propaganda in every election. You know, the state is full of propaganda. So I've been thinking about this a lot lately. What happens to us as a child when we have this idea of just wanting to get along with everybody, and then all of a sudden we start growing up and we get jaded along the way, and we're just fighting with each other because of tribalism. It comes down to tribalism, where anarchy is not. Anarchy is just you are responsible for yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, and you are responsible for your neighbor. Does that sound anything like the teachings of Jesus to you?
Yeah. Pick up your cross and follow me, and then the golden rule: do unto others as you do unto yourself. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, but I've been doing this for a while now, so it's pretty cut and dry and it's clear to me. But I understand there's people new coming into it that don't quite understand it, and the word anarchy can be scary to people too.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that doesn't help as well that the state system has made it a buzzword, and they've equated it to Molotov cocktails, masks, and, you know, absolute riot and chaos, like a BLM thing going on. And it's like, no, that we're nonviolent. but it's more of a sense is that we're advocating that we don't emancipate you. You emancipate yourself. Well, what does that look like? You start living by the Bible and Scripture, and that's it. And abstain from things of this world. I was telling you, I was telling you that I had that guy in the comment section that was telling me I'm going to hell for misleading people with the content I'm putting out, saying you need to abandon government, you need to abandon state and politics, or secular pagan concepts that's in this world. And I'm like, I'm leading people to hell by telling them to abstain from systems and institutions of this world.
Yeah.
Hold up. I have to ask you another question because that doesn't make any sense. The very definition of a Christian or a saint is to be set apart from things of this world. We're a peculiar people set apart for zealous good works, as we get in the New Testament. So what part of me saying I think that we should do this, not even trust the government, we just put all our faith in God, is leading people to hell? You've created God in your own image, sir, and I can't support that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you can read Scripture, and I don't know if the guy you was talking to claims to be a Christian or not. Okay, so leading people away from the state, where we know clearly in Scripture that the systems of this world, the kingdoms of this world, are backed by Satan and his demons. It seems like you're leading them back towards Jesus and away from Satan. I don't know. Seems like you're doing the work of Jesus. I mean, I don't know. That's
you would think, but I think that's the programming so much, is that they have us conformed to the system. Like I said, it's mind control. You can't now. It's like I said, you put AK-47 Jesus frosting all over your statism, your nationalism, your patriotism, call it whatever you will. And when I listed like 6 to 8 verses of what about here in Hosea 8:4, what about here, what about our citizenship is in heaven, as we get in Philippians 3:20. I'm just rattling them off, and he's over here like, well, 1 Samuel 8. You're only able to argue one passage with me, not all the rest of them. Like, if a Christian is able to freaking wield a couple of rounds of ammo at you with direct scripture that addresses the issue in hand, and you yourself are only able to articulate one point back because, I've heard this talking point before, it doesn't sound like you know your Bible, because now you're being selective. And if you're picking and choosing from Scripture, that's what Satan does. I take one verse, I bring it to Christ and say, see, Scripture justifies what I'm saying and thinking. And he's like, yeah, but here's another verse that cancels out with where you're trying to manipulate that. Nice try. Now go away.
Wait, did you say he used 1 Samuel 8 as an example to defend?
I used 1 Samuel 8.
Oh, you used it. I thought you were saying he did. I was like, well,
no. I listed that as, I said first 1 Samuel 8, and then I was listing like 6 or 7 other verses. Foolish is the man that puts their faith in flesh, from Jeremiah 17:5. All the typical verses, that you can pull out where he's saying he's condemning the state or kingdoms. He's not fond of them, and he doesn't want to accept that, because why? Because if I have to get rid of my idol, that means I have to start looking at myself. And that's just like the rich man. Can you get rid of, you're like, okay, cool, you've been obeying all the laws. One thing, can you get rid of your riches? Can't do it, can you? So that's what I'm saying. When you literally say, I surrender all, what is that? Are you really putting it all on the altar, or are you still holding back?
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I was listening to you, and it sounds like this guy you were talking to is really, he's afraid of something, and I don't know if he's afraid of
statism. Yeah,
without the state, something. I don't know. It's such a stupid argument to me too, because especially when people start thinking about or start trying to compare anarchy to chaos.
Yeah.
And start describing what's going to happen if it lived in an anarchist society, if we were all just anarchists. And then they start saying I said, everything you're describing, what's going to happen has already happened because the state exists. Anarchists are not going to be able to marshal the same kind of tools that the state can.
Right.
Because the state steals your money, which, by the way, thou shalt not steal is in the Bible. And they use that money to steal from you, to kill people across the world, and even your neighbor
and yourself.
And the Bible says thou shalt not kill. You can't give them some kind of excuse because they have a shiny badge, or they got some kind of whether they're a senator or president or whatever you want, whatever they are, you can't give them a pass on what the Bible teaches because they have some sort of authority, which is fake, by the way. That authority does not exist unless you keep believing in it. The belief in authority, the belief in this, the authority of the systems of this world is what keeps them going. Once we take away that belief in the authority, they don't exist anymore. They're just people with really bad ideas. That's all they are. They're just people. Because once that support goes away, they will fall under their own weight.
And we see that they're absolutely terrified of us because they have to put out or censor that kind of content. It's making them say, do you see how stupid this sounds when you point out both sides? And they're like, you don't want to hear it. That's all. Again, that's as a Christian, I'm over here saying, look in the mirror. Do you see how silly this is when you support this? And then you go about, well, what about is, we're not talking about that. We're talking about your side, the one that you want to choose. And I'm telling you, there's only one narrow way betwixt your two sides that we're supposed to be. And you don't want to do that because that requires, oh, I got to pick up my own baggage. I can't do, well, it was Adam. It was Eve. It was the serpent. No, it got to start with the man in the mirror, as Michael Jackson said. You got to start with you.
Yeah, it's incredibly lazy too. People that don't want to take responsibility for themselves, and they want. I've said it often that people who are still involved with politics and voting and all that stuff are lazy thinkers. They don't want. They want to outsource their. It's not even responsibility, but responsibility to the state. I just say that they're. I probably said this on your show before, but outsourcing their sin to the state. Because they want the state to do things that they're not willing to do themselves.
It's a scapegoat ideology. Well, I'm going to project it on someone who's more degenerate and morally depraved than myself, as opposed to saying, oh crap, I'm actually supporting this thing by purchasing a ticket to keep the circus going. Yeah, that's what we're telling you. And we're telling there's another option. It's follow Christ. Be the countercultural obstacle, or the salmon swimming me upstream. The book I was referring to, the Demanding the Impossible, was a 1968 anarchist slogan in France. And David Marshall wrote the book, folks. Highly recommend purchasing it. And I was like, yeah, that is at its core what a Christian is once you realize, okay, I'm not supposed to be conformed to things of this world, which is ultimately what statism is. It's conformity to the secular institutions of this world and thinking. Once you finally determine, okay, that's not for me, because now I'm a Christian. Now I just realized I am now following Christ, who liberated me from the state of slavery. And I'm now supposed to be an ambassador behind enemy lines until he comes and picks me up to go back home. That's what it is. That's it. And the concept, I think as well, what I've been noticing reading Jacques Ellul, a lot of that tends to contribute why we have such poor discipleship in our culture. Because what he wrote, I think it was in that particular book, when the state took over the church, they started doing mass conversion, more so forced on the culture. So the individual conversion of per individual started to be questionable, whether it was genuine or not, right? So as long as you went to the parish and you went to the services, the mass, fill in the blank, you were considered Christian. But then the personal application of, I'm actually working on this, I'm actually reproving this area, I die to self daily, as Paul wrote. That part kind of got tossed out. What's your thoughts with that?
Well, going back to how, and I think I know what part you're talking about, what Jacques Ellul was talking about, but people need to recognize that I think it's so important for Christians to understand where that happened and what happened with the church kind of coming together with the state. Because to me, and maybe it went further back than that, but to me, it seems like when everything started changing the face of the church, what the church was about, when they got in bed with Constantine, and to me, that there's nothing in Scripture that would suggest. I don't care if they were early church fathers or not, or whatever you think about these people. And I adore the early church. Everybody knows that. Anybody that listens to the show knows that. But once they got in bed with the state, there's a huge problem here. I think people tend to put some people on pedestals when they should be putting Jesus on the pedestal. because we're all human beings and we're all going to make mistakes. And I feel like the church made a huge mistake by getting in bed with Constantine, because you see what happened to the church. They started becoming murderers. It was completely opposite of what Jesus sent them out to do.
Right.
And I don't know if they were because they were so far removed from the time of Christ or not. We're talking 300 or 400 years later. The first 300 or 400 years of Jesus, after Jesus, they were pretty staunch, no king but Christ. But once they got in bed, and then there's talk too that they some of them, they were tired of being martyred, slaughtered by the empire, so they thought it was prudent to get in bed with the state to get some kind of protection. But you see what has happened now. We're 2025 now, and look what we are. Look where we're at right now as a church, especially in America. We're so far gone. And I've had this conversation a lot recently, especially at farmers markets. They want to know what the bad Roman's about. And I said, we're just trying to get Christians to get back to that thinking of the early church. We're no king but Christ. We're pacifists, and we don't follow the state. I said, because if you look at the church, the state of the church today, it's completely opposite of what Jesus set out to do. There's nothing, it doesn't look like it. I made a post and I got some pushback on it, but the early church, if they were walking around America right now, they would not recognize the church as a church. They would be completely foreign to them. They were having church in their houses.
Yeah.
They were serving. Even the Roman Empire recognized that the Christians were taking better care of Roman citizens than even the empire was. They even saw this. Now we got Christians now wanting the state to take care of their neighbor. That is not what Jesus told us to do. And it wasn't a suggestion. He didn't ask us to, he told us to do it.
Yes.
Christians need to start taking that more seriously. And I really believe, and it doesn't even have to happen on a grand scale, but I believe if it started happening more and more, we're going to change this world. The state becomes obsolete and we get closer to the kingdom of God in heaven on this earth. But Christians need to start being more active, more proactive in this fact. And I'm not saying, I know some people don't have the means, and I get it. Don't get me wrong. You do with what you can.
Right.
We all work as individuals separately to bring forth the kingdom. So, I mean, whatever it is, just do something. Take your neighbor some chicken. Or if you got chickens, go give your neighbor some eggs, something. Or if they're struggling and they need a light bill paid, pay their light bill. I mean, it's just stuff that's voluntarism, in a nutshell. I get incredibly frustrated these days with Christians, as I have for the past 4 or 5 years, and I was thinking about this too, and this is maybe it's kind of on topic, but a little off topic. But like when you look at social media and you look at Christians on social media, the way they're behaving when it comes to government, that is all they're talking about. They're fighting with each other instead of taking the words of Jesus and just let's just get back to the Sermon on the Mount and start there, and let's work from there and see what we can change. See how the world will change, because we're doing what Jesus told us to do. And that's why I think, when people, well, what about this part of the Bible? I'm not dismissing that or the rest of the Bible. What I'm saying is I want you to let's refocus on Jesus. And then the rest of the Bible is going to make more sense to you.
Right.
Once you've lost focus on what Jesus told us to do, the Bible doesn't make sense anymore sometimes.
Well, you start becoming afraid and you start sinking like Peter, because you're looking at the storms of life, the chaos, the government, well, you start fearing the government. And I was recommended that book, The Lure of the Arena, by, I think it was George Fagan, but Fagan's the name of the author. But it was explaining how basically the appeal of the arena, or they're watching people get martyred or having, a hang day later on as it went to the 17 and 1800s. It was the deflection of, oh, look, somebody else is getting punished, right? And it's rightfully so. But it became kind of like a sadist sociopath sport where you're over here like, yeah, they deserve it because they're illegal, right? They're getting punished by the state today, not me. So you kind of let out that fear of you're too scared to stand up and set yourself apart or say, hey, not for me. That you like seeing somebody else get abused. And that made me start thinking, I'm like, is why the appeal of Christians getting martyred was like the real reason? Like they made up trumped up charges just so they could get their, kicks, if you will, from watching them suffer. Like,
Right.
granted, was it Perpetua? I was reading about her in I think it was Caesar and the Lamb, and it was talking about the acts of military martyrs. But I think she was one of the stories that came up, and I was going, people, I'm kind of sad when we're looking at the history books and we talk about the early church. We go from Paul to Martin Luther, and that's it. But the more I've been reading on this stuff with Tertullian, Irenaeus, and all these other martyrs, it's making me go, this is perfect because it's applicational. It doesn't matter the century, but as a Christian, it doesn't, or the decade. This is how we're supposed to be living. Is saying I'm willing to die for what I believe in. And today, too many Christians are cowering, saying, "Well, I don't know if I want to go through torture." And I think this is why the pre-trib rapture is so appealing, right? It lulls them into this false sense of, "Well, I don't really have to do anything. I just, have to be a good person until Christ comes back. Meantime, I support the government. I pay my taxes. I do my tithe. That's it." But they don't really do anything, as you just said, with the voluntary aspect. Now, if you could elaborate a little bit more of what that looks like applicationally, as opposed to I'm reading some of this stuff, and I think the terminology is very poor, saying that, the early church was very communistic. Communal, maybe, with donations, but if you could flush that out a little bit more, if that was actually put into practice, ideally, what would that look like, or what could per individual start doing?
Well, I mean, just kind of like what I said a while ago. To me, a voluntary society is not going to be a nation state, not on that kind of grand scale. You're going to have pockets of it where it could expand out. And I'm not even convinced that the state's ever going to go away until Jesus comes back.
Mm-hmm.
Completely go away. Now, I think we can disregard them to the point where we don't even know they're there. You know what I mean? But voluntarism is voluntarily interacting with one another, voluntary exchange with one another without coercion. It's voluntary. Think about that for a second. With the state, everything the state does, it's with the threat of a gun. That's not voluntary. Statism is the opposite of voluntary. Voluntarism is working alongside it with one another, working with one another, working for one another, helping one another. What else does that sound like to you? That sounds like you're serving one another, as we were taught in the Bible. Jesus came to serve, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. That's voluntarism. Nobody's telling you have to do it. But if you read, I always go back to the Sermon on the Mount. Maybe I've made my faith so simple just to make it easier for me.
Right.
If you go back to everything that Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, it's voluntarism. It's voluntary. He wants you to do it. He's commanding you to do it, but he's not going to force you to do it. But if you start living like Jesus, you're going to want to do it. You're going to voluntarily do it because you want to emulate Christ. You want to be the image of Christ. They will know you. They will know me because of the way you love one another. That's voluntarism. I don't know. I don't know if that's enough for you. But
no, that's good. And this is, I think, veering into the frustration that I think a lot of us content creators are experiencing and/or ministry with our podcasts, is that there's really a lack. I think that we have a lot of people that just click like, click dislike, or write their little comment, and you're like, really? That's your contribution to the world, is throw it out into a digital universe? But you don't contribute. You don't ever say, this was really good. Thank you for making this application. Now, I'm not saying this is everybody, but I'm saying statistically, I noticed 3,000 people follow me on YouTube, but there's only like 40, 50 people that are actually supporting the ministry, right? The Bible is clear, and I think emphasized, especially in James, be ye doers of the word and not hearers only, or you'll know them by their fruits. Why? Because you're not doing good works to get in God's favor. You're doing it and just saying, I get it. now I want to serve my community and or in the Christian community. If you need money for a missionary trip, here. If you need a place to stay, you can have, a little spot in my garage because, my house is too full. Something. You're offering that up because you understand they're part of the body. I think St. Cyprian, he phrased it, I think I posted it on Facebook, but to paraphrase, you must debar yourself from the congregation of hearers. Yeah, there's a consistent theme that if they're not doing, then they're not part of the body, right? So if people get mad at you for, or again, you said maybe you didn't want to say it, but you're right. If we're saying you're lazy, which Christ was even giving stories of the useless servant, the lazy servant, the one that hid his talents. If you're not doing anything, he doesn't want you. Well, he doesn't want. No, he wants you ideally, but he wants you to start doing something, even if you're given one talent to try to start doing that. It doesn't mean you have to be an expert, but 5 loaves, 2 fishes, man. Bring it to me. I'll make it work.
Are
too many people are scared to do that. Go ahead.
Are you familiar with voluntarism in action?
The page
or VIA?
Yes, I am. I just was wondering if you had any personal things, but feel free to recommend or
shout out anything. I mean, I've had them on the show before, and this is, I think, what the way they're set up is perfect for people who can't physically go help somebody in need, because what they do is they take donations and they help different things, different people that are going through a crisis or whatever. They have different things that they help people, and I think it's, to me, given to something like that instead of tithing at a church that isn't doing anything, trying to, you know what I'm saying, or giving it to somebody that has the podcast or something that's trying to spread the word of no king but Christ. Do that as well. But to me, the way they're set up is perfect, and I love everything they're doing, because you could just send them $5. You don't know what that $5 is going to do, but they could use it to help somebody along the way. That's nice. They're voluntary. I love the name because they are putting action into the voluntarism side of it, and they are voluntarily going to help people with it. And they're doing it by being funded by people who want to help but can't necessarily help, like we're talking about here. You know what I mean?
Right.
Dude, I mean, like awesome. You're talking about like the people who like to comment in the comment section. I don't read the comments that often anymore. I've got a few trolls on the Facebook page, and I know they're there, and I don't care. I appreciate the algorithm boost. They're useful idiots to me, so they're, because they don't say anything of substance. They just don't like what I have to say. and I've dealt with that for over 5 years now, so I'm used to it. It kind of just rolls off my back.
You get numb to it, and I think somebody commented under one of our sessions together, and he says, well, what about I think he listed like 4 people that were Christian nationalist preachers or whatever in their ministries, and like, what you guys are talking about, like, you're just going to throw them under the bus because you didn't like the inscription or what we said during the show. And I was like, okay, I'm not, like, this is not a page for you if this is how you're already getting upset, as we're saying we just don't care. Because I think I wrote that is nationalism as its core is defending the embers of empires. Like, I think you are correct, is that it's not going to end until Christ returns. The thing is, we are the voice in the wilderness saying, prepare ye the way of the Lord. And you don't like that because it's like, well, why? What do you mean, why? If you truly love him, yeah, I love him, but what's wrong with voting? Oh, boy. And then you have to elaborate and explain it. Like, for me, I explain the occultic aspects and, stuff. You go into more of the applicational. But as you said, all of this comes together into a body of formation of application. It's like I didn't want to be mean, but I was thinking it. Somebody put in their little thing on Instagram, like their comment for the day, did you read your Bible? And I'm like, I think you might want to rephrase that. Did you live your Bible today? Right? Yeah. Because as I said before, I truly think that anti-voluntarism or people who don't get what we're talking about, nationalist patriots, fill in the blank with all of that, their life verses is going to be in Matthew 27, 21, and 23. You didn't want to clothe anybody, right? You didn't want to feed anybody. And those that you did to the least of my brethren, you also did for me. We're not doing that with Alligator Alcatraz. Like, I'm looking at that, bro, going, we went from BLM, all lives matter, to I don't care as long as if they're illegal. They deserve to get what they get.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and
Like,
kind of going back to
what a time.
when you were talking about like the martyrs and what they stood up for the truth and they were being killed for it. Jesus stood up for the truth and he was killed for it. We may be not experiencing the same thing today, but don't think that you won't get they won't shout you down. Try to shout you down if you're standing up for the truth. I get it all the time. I'm always going to talk about genocide is against the teachings of Jesus.
Yeah.
Locking people in a cage because they cross an imaginary line that the state set up is against the teachings of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
There's I've been called anti-Semitic. I got called satanic the other day.
Yeah.
Did you see that one?
I frequently see a lot of the comments. That's why sometimes I'm going to town batting for you because, yeah, sorry. I love defending like-minded people.
I've been called a lot of things over the past 5 years because people disagree with me, but that was the first time I'd ever been called satanic.
I had someone ask me if I'm selling Nazi swastikas as part of my merch. I was like, what? How did you come to that conclusion from the entire show? Again, it's because they're lazy. I said I always emphasize against ideologies, not ethnicities. Couldn't give a crap about that. But they're too lazy to say, like, okay, if you're against that, what is that? Here's some books. Yeah, but what is that? Here's some books. Like, it's like I'm telling you where you can get the resource or where you can buy this bread real cheap on the dollar so you can actually do something better with your life. And you're going, yeah, could you just explain it to me in a comment section? Like, no.
I've gotten to the point now. We're fixing to release our 100 next week, I think, our 141st episode. And I've gotten to the point now where people want to sit and argue with me online. I don't do it anymore. I very rarely will. I got too much to do outside of social media to sit and argue with a stranger I've never met before. But I will send them a link to the website. And I said, we've got all of this content. You're going to find your question or your answers, or you're going to find the answers to your questions somewhere along the way in this podcast.
Yes.
Because we've covered all of this that you're asking me. Instead of going back and explaining it, to each individual, I just direct them to the website. Go to the website. There's 140 episodes right now that you can go back and you're going to find some answers. I promise you. I've done it on purpose, and we do it over and over on purpose to make sure there's enough content with different perspectives to get people the answers they need for this. And that's the whole design by the Bad Roman Project, is to get people thinking differently about what they've been taught in their schools and their churches.
Yeah.
There's plenty of content. I don't have to spend all day online debating, arguing, explaining this stuff when you could go do it yourself. I'm doing it for free.
Yes.
I'm doing it for free because I want you to understand this. So now all you got to do, get on your whatever, wherever you listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever, pull up the Bad Roman, scroll through the 140 episodes, and you're going to find a title that's going to catch your eye, and it's going to answer your questions.
I listened to him like the data tips guy. When it was snowing up here, I was listening to him while I was going around the thing where I was doing a job shoveling. I just had him playing one after the other. Yeah. And as I said, I do a little bit of a dance every time you do the intro at that show. So I don't know, guys, like, it's worth it. I cannot endorse the Bad Roman enough. It's really, he's right. It does get you thinking, and all of it does interconnect. Ironically enough, is even if, like you said, somebody's coming from a little bit of a different, but it's just like it's a different position on the clock, but it's still part of the clock. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So we've done all the work for you.
Yeah.
We've done all the work for you. If you don't, if you don't want to read, go listen to a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I've had several authors on the show. Go read their book once you listen to their show. Listen to the show. I've done the work. Everybody involved with the project's done the work for you because we love you and we want you to get this. We want you to understand this because it is important. Because we are sinking in such a quick way. Society is anyway. It's going further and further down, and we've got to turn it around. We got to turn it around, and that's why we do it, because the topic is very important to me. It's been important to me for a while. Once my eyes started opening up to this stuff, we've done the work. Now you go listen.
You just made me start thinking. I said, technically anarchists. We're the violinists on the Titanic. Everybody's like, the ship's sinking. Why aren't you? Is like, yeah, women and children first, but we're gonna try to make everybody feel better by playing Nearer Thy God to Thee. You may not appreciate it, but what can I contribute during my last moments of life and try to bring a little bit of peace and calm to everybody else that's freaking out? This is the end. That's what we're trying to do, is saying, relax, it's okay. And the melody we're playing is look to Christ. That's it. It's the calm of the eye of the storm. That's what all we're saying. Granted, we know that the government or our employers are going to ask for payment for our uniforms once the ship goes down from our families, which is a really mean move. But guess what? We're gone. We've gone to heaven. We don't care. So, another question. Anarchy as Christians means nonviolent aggression. How do you, or should a Christian, handle violence like a home invasion, or if in a community, handle a murder situation? What is the biblical way?
This is one of the toughest topics to discuss. I think it's different for everybody, because I've had this conversation over and over, and the way I view it has evolved over time as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, let me start with this. I'm not going to judge anybody on how they react to somebody breaking into your home, trying to murder you and your family, or not. Because I can't be completely honest with you and tell you exactly how I would react.
Right.
I can sit here and tell you all day long what I would like to go down. Okay. I don't have time anymore, but I think I've told you this too, but I was training jujitsu for a little while. I was pretty bad at it. Or maybe everybody else around me was just really good at it. I don't know, but one thing that drove me to do it is because it was a way to end a violent altercation without killing somebody.
Right.
So my view on this is a pacifist. I'm a pacifist. I still have a pistol because I like to target shoot. I grew up around guns. They don't scare me. I like to shoot guns, but I've gotten to the point now where so I try to speak for myself and not for anybody else on this topic. I'm not willing to kill anybody back. Now, I don't have kids. I'm not married, but if I were, I would do everything I could to stop the perpetrator so they could get away, even if that meant me losing my life. I just don't think that Jesus wants us to kill anybody. And I think if you took something like jujitsu, learn jujitsu, it's a way to end an altercation. You can put somebody to sleep very quickly. You're not killing them, and the altercation's over. I've really leaned heavily on the early church on this topic, because if you read the words they were using, and they were getting killed all the time, but they would not kill back. They went to their death proclaiming Jesus is king. And Jesus even said, Jesus would not have killed anybody. He could have killed everybody that was going to murder him.
Right.
And he didn't do it. And it's a topic that it's difficult to go through. I've had a lot of debates, and it's very heated debates on this. And I got to the point now where I won't judge I'm not going to judge anybody on how they would react to something like that, because I can't be 100% on how I would react to it. I know, like I said, I'd like to think I would do this, but at the end of the day, I've got some cats who I adore, and if somebody was harming one of my cats, there's going to be a problem. Matter of fact, I've got a cat named Perpetua.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning her before. Yeah, dude. That for me, I was liking, what was it? The Aikido, which is kind of like the standing up version of jiu-jitsu. And I also was liking, I was taking some kendo for like katana swords. And the sensei was saying, you take to this like a fish to water. I'm like, well, last name used to be Pike before I was adopted. I said, Pikeman is probably somewhere in there. We're used to standing guard. I believe there's a little bit of that ancestral kick in it sometimes. And I think it was a Netflix series. I wanted to look it up while you were speaking, is the Hamura Kenshin. And what I really liked about this origin stories of it was that he used to be like an assassin, and he was really freaking good. He could clean up a room with his sword. And then one day, somebody he loves got killed by a sword, so he says, I can't do this anymore. So he intentionally inverts his sword so that the blunt end is on the end, and the sharp part is facing towards him. So when he gets into altercations, he's literally just like bruising people, knocking on their, their ankles, or, and he's really fast. But I was like, non-violent, but still holding off the enemy so other people can live for all of his ventures. And I was like, that is a really cool concept. And that's kind of what I've thought of it always, as you said, is kind of be the Viking that holds the bridge so that everybody can keep going, right? They can escape. Be that person that stands behind and says, you know what? I'm willing to lay down my life for you guys. I don't have to kill anybody, but I'm going to hold the bridge as long as I can as a man, right? That's, I think, what we're called to do.
Well, and people will take what I say and try to, they'll misrepresent it and represent it and say that I'm suicidal. Like I'm just wanting to die. And I'm like, that's not even close to the truth. I've just gotten so far, man. Maybe I've told you this before, but the reading the early church has screwed me up for the better, I think. But it just makes me rethink about how I view everything, And I've got his name's Jason Porterfield, and I've had him on the show a couple of times. Yeah. But there's a link, and it's called 40 Early Christian Votes or Quotes on Enemy Love. And I want to read one from you. I pulled it up, and it's Origen. You're familiar with Origen?
Yes. Yep.
He said, to those who ask us whence we have come or whom we have for a leader, we say that we have come in accordance with the counsels of Jesus to cut down our warlike and arrogant swords of argument into plowshares, and we convert into sickles of the spears we formerly used in fighting. For we no longer take sword against the nation, nor do we learn any more to make war, having become sons of peace for the sake of Jesus, who is our leader, instead of following the ancestral customs which we were strangers to the covenants. And I think he's even expanded this list to 100 quotes, early church quotes on enemy love.
Right.
And it's another way to look at what's going on in Gaza. When we talk about the genocide, I don't remember if it was somebody made a post. I can't remember his name, but it was, we already know how we're supposed to respond to this. Even if it's your enemy, even if they're your enemy, you're supposed to feed them. You think about Polycarp, when they came to arrest him, to have him to kill him, he ordered his servants to feed them first. Think about that for a second. Would we ever consider that? Somebody trying to harm us? Well, hang on a second. I got something for you to eat first. I want to feed you. He knew what they were there for. It's the same thing with Jesus, with Judas. He fed Judas. He washed his feet, knowing what Judas was going to do. It's just it's a tough topic. But I think you just really, I don't know how to explain it. I just try to do it personally. How would you? How do you look at this?
I've been thinking about that, and I think Caesar and the Lamb, and the other one, The Early Church on Killing by Cider. Both of them gave very compelling arguments. And like you, I think it's kind of messing me up. Not in a bad way, but it's really like, what was the thought on capital punishment? And for me, that's part of the reason why I wanted to bounce that off of you, because I understand, even with like, the libertarian concept of it was a NAP, where you non-aggression principle.
Yeah,
you're like, oh, you're a hypocrite, because then again they get pedantic and they want to narrow in and be like, oh, well, look at those. I think there's always exceptions, right? I think it's always an 80-20% exception, and in the heat of the moment, who knows, right? Like, let's say there is a road rage and somebody runs over and they're trying to freaking hurt somebody in the vehicle that I'm in, and I have the means of defending that person. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to, again, granted, yeah, I could just throw myself in front of the bullet and okay, that's cool. Or I could try to find a means of trying to prevent it as best as I can. Would it sometimes be lethal? Possibly, but it's not my ultimate recourse of wanting to go that route. I don't, like you said, I don't know, but it's definitely making me rethink the I don't know, the premise of taking lives. It really makes me think. I don't think I would want to take a life necessarily. However, if it comes towards me, again, I'm left with no other recourse. I do not want to draw my sword. I will try to first talk you out of it, right? Because that's what I was given first, right? The tongue is the sharpest weapon you'll ever find. If I could write something about it, I, like try to send a letter of, hey, here's some points, let's consider this. But if I am left with no other recourse, and again, I think in finality, since we might be encroaching end times, I kind of like, if God wants me to, I'm pretty sure he will let us know, right? If we're going to go up against Nephilim tribes in Canaan, he's going to let us know, right? In the meantime, he made it clear in Isaiah 2, was it 2 and through 4 or 2:4, about you just said the weapons into plowshares and fish hooks. That's kind of the way I look at it, is I'm not looking for the fight, but if it comes to me, I have enough knowledge to try to disengage and or to eliminate the threat as quickly as possible.
I'll tell you something that I said in one of these debates, and this was a pretty heated debate. It was online, obviously, but I knew some of the people, and I told them, I said, listen, I understand where you're coming from. I said, but have you ever considered something, an alternative other than pulling a pistol? Why is pulling a pistol always the first thing we go to? Have you ever stepped back and said, well, what if something comes up? What if maybe if I got this other tool in my pocket, like jujitsu? And then I said this and it pissed them off because I said, if your first inclination is go grab a pistol, then you're being a lazy thinker. It's incredibly lazy. Why haven't you thought more about what you could do if because we talk about this all the time, so you've got ideas of how you would react in a certain situation. Have you ever sat and thought about maybe an alternate way to diffuse a situation without killing somebody? And that did not sit well with them. But listen, I know exactly where they're coming from because I grew up in gun culture, and that's the way I used to believe. You mentioned capital punishment a while ago. I used to believe in the death penalty, but the more I got away from the state, I realized, like, I don't think the state has a right to decide who dies and who lives. You know, I don't know. It's probably going to be pretty ironic. I'm probably going to lose my life trying to defend somebody when I had the means to probably stop it and kill that person. But, we'll see. That's kind of in God's hands. Hopefully it doesn't ever come to that.
The first murder in the Bible was basically banished. So I think that's technically, if it was like a communal aspect and somebody you're gone, you can't stay here. If you try to come back and hurt everybody, we gave you a warning. We gave you an option to get out of here.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
And I wasn't directing at you. I just brought to mind a conversation I had in the past, because I've had this conversation a lot. And I know I remember I pissed off a lot of people that day, which seems to be par for the course anyways.
It's a prerequisite. It's an occupational hazard.
If you come asking me for asking questions, don't get mad at me, because I'm going to tell you how I feel and I'm going to tell you the truth.
Right.
I don't know how else to behave. Just my mom told me not to lie.
Yeah. So what are your? I know. I think we said this prior to the show, but what do you say to some of the anarchists that appreciate the rebel Satan as the first anarchist, as an individual who denied authority? Now, this goes even more into the extreme of anarchy, which I said there's many tapestries tied into this, and you have to be very careful as a Christian. But the concept of no gods, no masters, I like downgrading that to just no masters, no slaves. I saw a hoodie on that. I'm almost tempted to buy it once I save up the funds at some point, because I was like, that's cool. I like that. But the concept, I think it was, let me see if I can find his name, because I can't pronounce it for the life of me, a Russian guy. Bakunin, whatever his name is. He was saying that basically his summation, hence why I was like, I'm not going to buy any of your reading material. But what's your thoughts on that as being the first rebel? And I'll even tie this onto that. When it was talking about libertarian, I think one point in a show, somebody said that's basically Satanism, because you do as thou will. Caveat that I throw into that is just libertarianism, and I'll even concede this for all libertarians. It's just libertarianism, meaning individuality. And this is why your party never works, because you don't understand it's about individuals, not a party.
Yeah.
So that's why you always butt heads every single time. It's like, good, we're supposed to argue, we're supposed to have an agora, but we're not supposed to form a party. So anyways, but he was saying basically the premise of do as thou wilt. Yes, but it's more of what I like to quote. I think it's is it Joshua 24, 14 through 15. I know your parents on the other side of the Euphrates, they worship these gods. And if that's what you guys want to do, cool. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's the take that I go with is I'm not going to force you. I'm not going to impose you, but I have free reign to debate and maybe convince, convict, convert you to come over and live the way that I'm doing as a Christian is supposed to do, right? What's your thoughts of that whole take? Which
That
was
was
a
a
lot.
lot.
Take
That
your
was a
time.
lot. That was a
Take your
lot.
time.
So,
Bullet points.
well, the first of all, Satan being the first anarchist because he
Yeah.
rebelled. Did he? Think about this for a second. Did he actually rebel against God, or was he trying to make himself God or above God? He was seeking authority still. He wanted the authority.
So more of a coup as opposed to rejecting authority
He
itself.
wanted to be God.
Yeah.
That's why he got kicked out of heaven, because he was trying to set himself up as the Most High. Isn't that what the
Right.
Bible says? He
Nice.
wasn't rebelling. He was trying to be God. He was trying to be. He wanted the same authority that God had, and you can't.
Right.
He couldn't do it. I'd never heard anybody say that Satan was the first anarchist because he rebelled, and that's because when you think about it, we mentioned earlier the temptation of Christ. What was he doing? He was trying to give Jesus the authority that he had over the kingdoms of this world.
Right.
So Satan was actually the ultimate statist. He had authority over all of the kingdoms of this world.
True.
And Jesus didn't deny that. Satan was not an anarchist. Satan is statism. Everything that statism is contrary to teachings of Jesus.
Right.
So he's the furthest from an anarchist. And he confuses people and he persuades people into statism.
Which is interesting because I think this particular guy was a communist anarchist. So that does make sense that he would be conflating the concept of rulers or authority in general. That is the problem, where it's not necessarily, it's the fact that you think you need rulers and you're trying to literally just give yourself a scapegoat of, I don't even want any, what is the word I'm looking for? Accountability. I don't want any accountability whatsoever to be scrutinized. It's basically eat, drink, and be merry anarchism, which is not what I endorse. It's more of a no. This comes down to me. When I say I accept him into my heart, it means I try to make that a practitioner of my lifestyle and choices, my testimony, if you will.
Yeah. Jesus was the anarchist.
Yes.
Jesus was the anarchist, not Satan. Jesus wanted nothing to do with the kingdoms of this world. He flat out told Satan that. I mean, Jesus was the anarchist. If you put Jesus and Satan, just picture them together. They're together. Satan's tempting Jesus. Satan is the state. Jesus was the anarchist, and Jesus said, "No, I don't think I will." Does that? I don't know if that explains it or not.
I gotta make a meme of this with Captain America going, "No, I don't think I will." No, that's good. That's good. No, and this is where I appreciate is bouncing it off of people, because I was going, okay, I think I see where they're going with this. Not sure that I agree, but I was curious your take, and that's correct. And I think that's even what I've been trying to explain to people. It says what basically statism is it puts you in a gun, and then it spins you around like a roulette, fires you towards a particular continent, and then it's up to you whether you want to submit to said continent's rulership, kingdom, whatever, kingdoms of this earth. And Christ says, "My kingdom is not of this world." And I always put that all in caps now, just to, right here, guys, right here. This is where it says "not." And I think that's really confusing for some folks, but it's like that. I think some meme summed it up, where it was saying, like, basically Christian nationalism is practicing all the things that Satan tried to tempt Christ on in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it's kind of true, because when you start breaking that down point by point by point, you're like, yeah, it doesn't matter. You pick your own kingdom or imaginary borders, lines, whatever you want to defend on a map, right? And then you justify it by saying, well, God's on my side. During the American Civil War, they both thought God was on their side, and they both justified. One was the feds that were saying, no, we need this country. The other ones were saying, no, we need slaves. You're all so messed up, and millions of people died.
Yeah.
Because you guys were confused of what it is just to be a true Christian, right? All this useless bloodshed on behalf of what? Because you are creating God in your own image.
Mm.
Wow. That's good. That's good. So your thoughts on do as thou wilt versus free will. As an anarchist, how do you differentiate the two?
I'll be honest with you. I don't think I've ever really thought about it. I kind of thought about it today. You sent me this list yesterday, and like I told you, I go to bed early these days because of my new schedule. But
Gotcha.
I looked at it some on lunch break today, and if I'm understanding "do as thou wilt," is that what you said?
Yeah,
If
it's
I'm
the Baphomet slogan of Satanism is basically, I put it in lyrics of a song. We want you to do as thou wilt, fight our wars without remorse, empathy, or guilt. Love the things of this world is what we ask of you to do. Just pay your money to the IRS. and that's kind of what it is. It's just go through the motions. Just live your life, eat, drink, be merry, consume. Obey like they live wherever it is. That kind of mentality is just don't even think. Just do as the culture tells you to do. Do as thou wilt.
Okay. Well, that doesn't sound anything like I thought it meant. I thought it was something completely different. So I'm gonna mess this up. Because I also
Right.
think that even free will can be destructive as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that what you described sounds like it could be destructive as well. Okay, so if you're what you were talking about, if you're conforming to what culture is telling you, what the world is telling you, that's self-destructive.
Mm-hmm.
Free will, we have the free will to either follow Christ or not, right?
Right.
And we're going to do both throughout our lives. When you think about how we kind of stray off or go about doing something that's going to be contrary to the teachings of Jesus, but if you're living your life without any kind of regret or without any kind of worry for what you're doing to somebody else or yourself, that's self-destructive. That's destructive, period. And I think I think there's a fine line really between the two. And I think you've got to, man, I don't know. I've not thought about this enough to give you a solid answer. I was really good a while ago, but right now I'm letting you down, I don't know really how to answer it. But I just think both. It sounds like both can be destructive, but it just gets back to the point of getting back to Jesus,
Well,
And
maybe I could help a little bit with just like the free will aspect. That is ultimately his understanding, and I think I wrote a post on it. It wasn't necessarily from the anarchist perspective at the time, but I was saying that when you have like a wild horse, their life expectancy is like 20 something years, I believe. I say maybe 16 to 20 years, I believe. And when they're domesticated, they have the potential of living up to like 40 years. But what was required for that? They had to get saddled. They had to learn to break them in so that people could actually ride them. They had to put on the bridle. But what is that kind of doing as a Christian? As I'm understanding, I am my own sovereign individual. Like you said, we're all born as anarchists. But I'm basically saying, I know I want to be a rugged stallion running out in the wilderness, but my life expectancy is going to be incredibly short. But I give it over to Christ, I get eternal life, or an extension in the horse's case. I get an extension because I submit to the master who's tamed me, who feeds me, who gives me, right, bread, water, life, this kind of stuff. That's kind of what I was trying to equate it to. I never thought of it in the anarchist perspective until just now. But yeah, that's kind of the free will is basically saying I submit, which I don't think most Christians get. Is that you say, yeah, I've given up everything, but then you still get into a voter's booth every November. You still go through the practice of arguing between this one's better and that one's better, as opposed to advocating the gospel of Christ. Like, I hear you with your politics online. I hear you with that. I see you putting up the selfies, but when it comes to C-19, I see you scrolling by. When it comes to a genocide in Gaza, I see you don't look on my page when or somebody like you and I we're putting content out there. I see you don't want to look at that. I also see now when we're getting Alligator Alcatraz, you cheering because they are by the definition of the state illegal. That is where I start looking at them going, is there anything? Are you alive spiritually speaking? And I think the irony that I'm seeing a lot now, Craig, is we're hearing the sleeping bridesmaids, and today we're calling them NPCs, but it's pretty much the same premise. You're programmed, right, to do as thou wilt, but you're going through the system, you're getting the money, right? Money is the root of all evil, the love of money, that's to be more precise. people just want to get their paychecks, and as long as the state's taking care of everything, right, and I'm entertained by what I see in the political arena, I don't really care. In the meantime, I'm going to wait for my rapture extraction, and I'm a good Christian. But you don't say anything for the oppressed and the orphans and the widows. You don't do anything to help ministry because you think your tithing is actually doing something when they're often endorsing political candidates from the pulpit because, well, you want the baby killer or do you want the other one that loves America? Well, obviously, I want the one. Really? Love
Man,
a plot of dirt or a baby killer? Like, no, both are evil, right? You're still endorsing the concept of choosing between good and evil. Yeah, same thing, never changed. But does that sound a little bit more flushed out if you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, we probably should ask you that question, and you just told the audience what you thought about it.
Ask myself my own question.
Because I was really bad on that.
I wanted to have a little bit of fluctuation because, again, that's why there's two people on a show, because we can fill in those blanks. I don't know.
I like the way you described it because of, especially with the horse description, because that's kind of how we are when it comes to Jesus. I mean, especially how you said he tamed the horse,
right?
And a lot of what is happening is Jesus is taming us and getting us back to him.
Yeah.
And I love getting back to what you were talking about, alligator Alcatraz, and I get hurt. I hear this all the time. Well, Jesus would just follow the law. And I'm like, that's stupid. Stupid.
He is the law.
Yeah. So, but he would. They're saying that he would follow if immigration laws and stuff like that. I said, no, he didn't. He was fleeing. Him and his parents were fleeing Herod when Herod was seeking him. Seeking to murder all the babies. But beyond that, the fact that you're celebrating people being put in a cage because they cross an imaginary line. I don't know. I think I've told you this before on another show that a lot of people have been turned over to the reprobate mind.
Yes.
And I don't think they can see it, man. I don't think they can see it, how they're behaving. And I see it all over social media. And it's disgusting, man. I'm so done. I'm so tired of social media because the way people are acting. But they say some of the dumbest things and then they call themselves Christians. They say some of the most hurtful things and they call themselves Christians. And they're saying hurtful things to other people who were also created by the same person that created them. Christians are gone. There's too many Christians. The vast majority of the church is too far gone. I feel like sometimes. I'm not saying that they can't come back. And you and I've talked about this before. We talk a lot about this for the remnant because there are people out there that are trying to figure this stuff out along the way.
Right.
Don't know how to ask the right questions. And I think this is why you wanted to set this episode up today to try to get some people some more answers, But you just saw I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not going to have all the answers, but I can get you to a starting point, and then you're going to grow on your own.
And that's honestly what discipleship is even if I don't have the answers, right? The Bible does.
Yeah.
And I may not know a particular passage at this time, or it doesn't, I think that's the classic thing, especially now when you become an anarchist or, both symbolism and anarchy. I'm now looking at the things in passages like, I would have skimmed over this, like, this is boring. But now when you make this applicational, you start going, oh, wow. I didn't see that before, but that's a really powerful, when they're condemning something or whether, they're saying to live like this. It's like, oh, this makes sense now. Now it's not just I sit there and I'm kind of just mulling over whatever the pastor's blah, 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 blah. It's like, wow, I can make this applicational during the week. It's not, or, I'm going to the dojo, I'm learning jujitsu, but now I can actually really use this in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just practice anymore. What is some other things I have here? So I know you already like Tertullian as well. So do I. I think I've narrowed down my three favorite writers as Tertullian, M.L. Mencken, and Ernest Hemingway. I really love Tertullian's style. He really nails it home at a lot of times. But aside from early church fathers and Jacques Ellul, as we mentioned prior, what's some of your favorite anarchists or books that you would endorse outside of like the early church books you've said before? Is there any other books or topics related to this that you would recommend?
Man, I wish I had the title. Have you listened to the episodes I did with Matt Mazakis?
I haven't gotten to that yet. I'm still catching up.
Okay. I'm gonna give me a second. I'm gonna find the book, the name of this book. Sure. But we did a 4-part series on his dissertation of Romans 13. Broke down First Peter. We broke down Deuteronomy 32 worldview, and also some of Revelation. But he turned that, him and his partner, his buddy, turned that dissertation into a book, and it's.
I bought it. I haven't read it.
Did you get it? Okay.
Again, based off of your recommendations, I just want to make sure you could throw the titles out on here yourself.
It's called Principalities, Powers, and Allegiances by Matt Mazakis. And dang, my eyes are so bad.
Could you spell out Mazakis for the crowd so at least they could get
that word? Mouzakis. And if you know who Brian Zonda is, Brian Zonda, the forward of the book. So you can find it on Amazon. That 4-part series we did on that dissertation was so detailed and was so. His dissertation, first of all, was detailed because he goes from the original Greek. He's not something he's reading from like new translations. He's going back to the original. He's got a really good understanding of the Greek text. So when he's talking about this, if you read this book, read his dissertation, you can reach out to him and he'll send you the dissertation you can read. If you read this, there's no way you can walk away from this and be like, oh, I should still go vote, or I should still run for office, or I should still be involved in politics, because it's very clear especially when you bring back the original text, that we're not supposed to be participating in any of that. Go get that book. It's a pretty, I don't want to call it dense read, but it's very detailed and there's a lot of information in it.
Can you give us at least, without all of it, can you at least give us a little bit of a brief synopsis of Romans 13 and what he basically came to as a conclusion from the Greek?
Okay, so Romans 13, where it says governing authorities, that means back in that time, Paul and them understood that to mean demons. Didn't mean government. Submit does not mean obey. Where Acts 5 says obey, submit in Romans 13 is a different Greek word than what is used in obedience. Every time the word obedience is used in the New Testament, it's to God. Submission is not obedience. Submit means you basically just going to take the consequences of not following the law if the law contradicts what Jesus taught us.
Interesting.
So
Romans, kind of being like a Daniel, daring. I don't think people understood, because I made the shirt "Dare to be a Daniel" with the dare from the 80s, but daring to basically pray and defy the state and still serve God. And again, it's just it's two hands. It's the hands folded in prayer. Even though the government is saying you have to do this because legislation says so, it's no. I'm going to dare to be a Daniel and defy that because this is who I am as a Christian. It's like I'm going to still serve my God despite what man says. And as we get in Acts 5:29 by Peter, it's better to obey God than man.
Yeah. There you go. Read Romans 13 and read Acts 5.
Okay.
Submit and obedience, 2 different Greek words. I learned that a long time ago, because when we first started this project, that was told to me about the governing authorities meaning demons. They understood that to mean demons. Yeah. I never knew that. And when you think about that, why as a Christian would you want to participate with demons, hang out with demons, Why would you support that?
When we do our next show, I can. I think you're going to really appreciate it, because I'm going to connect a lot for that, and how I think demons, anarchy, archons all connect with the mark of the beast. So yeah, it's pretty wild, and it's like if you're an anarchist, you're already in good setting because you're not going to fall for whatever's coming down the way. Why? Because you're like, I don't do any of that, so I'm not going to fall for it.
Well, if you get a chance to read that book that from Matt, I can connect. If I can connect you to, if you ever want to talk to him on the show about it. I mean,
oh, for sure,
he would be an awesome guest to have on. I've had him on several times, but yeah, he's got it going on. He's got it all. He doesn't have it all figured out, but he knows a lot more than I do, so, especially when it comes to stuff like that.
But I had my mentor, and he was arguing with me, and I was like, I had to hang up on him, dude. I could not take the conversation anymore. I was like, you are really acting not nice word. I was like, this is ridiculous. When I was telling him it doesn't matter whether I voted for Trump or not, I'm over here going, bro, that's neither here nor there is what he said. Exact phrasing. He said, one of us is wrong, and I don't think it's me. And I'm like, do you hear how arrogant and pompous you sound right now? I'm trying to give you some meat And I'm hearing you being like I've been saying, talking to statists is like putting a kid down for a nap, and they're kicking and screaming and whining the whole time. And you're just like, I really do not care. You can kick, you can scream. I'm a lot stronger than you. It's nap time for you. And I understand you're cranky. And I understand you know that you say this is not good for you. But I assure you, in a few years, and like, by the time you're your age, you're gonna want to go to bed early.
Yeah.
And it's ironic, dude, because it's again, it's like eat your greens. You don't want to do it, but it's good for you. And this is what Christianity or anarchy is saying. I really want to support that, but I did say I accepted Christ, and that means dying to self daily and denying things of this world. Set your mind on things above, not on things of this world. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I really am trying to encapsulate this concept. Some people are getting it, but there's others that I'm like, you really got to start picking up the book. And when I say pick up a book, it gives, and I always recommend this, especially a book like Jack Solol that is bringing scripture to make it contextual, right? Or having a guest like you. What'd you say his last name is?
Matt Mazakis.
Mazakis. Get somebody that's actually studied the Greek, right? Because we all can contribute and help solidify. This is why I believe what I believe, and I'm willing to die for what I believe.
Yeah.
What is again, aside of Tertullian, is there anybody else 1800s, 1700s, particularly? I think that's when that started coming a little bit more prominent, or in topics. Is there anybody that you have that you really like?
No, I mean, I'm sure there's some out there. Don't get me wrong. I got, it's I'm so hyper focused on the early Christians that
Fair.
the stuff I learned from them. So I haven't really branched out anything further because I really want to get people back to that way of thinking, and I'm sure there's some along the way. I got somebody told me the other day that Anabaptists were heretics. And I'm like, I just started laughing out loud. I mean, I was like, they were being killed by
both sides.
Yeah, because they were heretics. Well, no, I don't even want to get into that, but I like a lot of the Anabaptist stuff. If you could get your hands on that, we've had some shows about the Anabaptists with their anti-state, stance on a lot of things. I think there's different types of Anabaptists where some of them might be statist, but
right. Well, it's just like the anarchists, with some of them saying that Satan's the first anarchist, but it's like you have to start sifting out and knowing who to choose your battles from or who to listen to.
Well, I took some. There's a place down the road, about 20 minutes down the road, that it's a Mennonite community. And they got their own little store. Fantastic people. They're always happy, working hard, and they bought some salsa from it so they could put it on their shelves. And the guy, the second guy I talked to, he was looking at my little business card and was looking at the label on the salsa. He goes, "So you like an anarcho-Christian?" And when you don't know somebody and they ask you that question, you don't really know what their reaction is going to be when you say yes. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I kind of went a different direction, more like a Greek Orthodox." But he goes, "There seems to be some crossover." So he understood what we're about, So, but it's just neat when I had another guy at a farmer's market last week come up. He goes, "Christian anarchist?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Me too." But it's one of those things where they say it at first, you're like, you kind of tense up because you're like, man, I don't really want to argue with anybody right now. I just want to sell some salsa and go home.
Well, you're telling me a Baptist preacher asked you, and I was over here going, wow, a Baptist asked that question, because I'm not going to lie, because that's the...
Oh, no, that was a different conversation.
Huh?
The Christian anarchist guy, he was just a random guy where I got some peppers from. But
I was talking about the pastor you mentioned, and I think in a DM we were chatting, and you said you had a pastor that came over, or no, you put a post on Facebook saying you had a Baptist pastor that came over and I was asking you about it, and I've had a lot of beefs with Baptists in the past. I'm an anti-denominationalist to the highest degree. Denomination, even nations. Like, again, it's another institution that I'm just against in general. I don't like institutionalizing, or put institutions and ideologies. I think pulls away from the individual, and that's what I'm saying. Is, again, it's very iconoclastic. Where I'm like, no, I'm very rigid. That's going to lead to this. That's going to lead to that. I don't want to go down that route. When you mentioned a Baptist pastor that was actually interested, I was over here going, good. Now, if we started teaching this in seminary schools, we might get some traction, because then the congregants would start being convicted again, and they would start doing, right? They'd start living it again. And that's, again, why I've recommended Frank Viola's The Pagan Christianity and Church Reimagined, because then it starts making it, okay, so if I don't follow rulers of men, what do I do? Read this book. You give it over to the Holy Spirit. That's it? Yeah. Really that easy?
Yeah.
And when you start doing that, you start taking away, like, okay, so I don't need to wear suit and tie. The tithing thing is coming from, this. Okay, so it's been tainted. Standing up, sitting down every time you do a hymn, that's okay. It starts breaking it all down. And you start going, wow, am I even doing Christianity? And once you take away your monkey suit and all the traditions of men and rituals, you start going, what am I doing here? Exactly. Ask the question, why do you do the things you do? This is what I really liked about Socrates. It's like, I want to understand, why is the world the way it is? I'm going to go to the rulers of Greece. I'm going to ask them questions because they're in charge of all of us. So surely they would know. And they got upset with him, saying, go away. Don't ask us that. Okay, fine. I'll go to the poets. I'll ask them because they're gifted with words and they write our laws. Maybe they'll have the answer. They got upset with him. Go away. Then he goes to the builders. You build all these great structures for us. Maybe you have the foundation of what I'm looking for. And he came to find out nobody knows what the heck they believe in. They just go through the process and motions. And this is where the beauty of the Socratic method and challenging the Athenian state of saying, you guys don't know what the hell you're doing. And now you're saying I'm corrupting the youth for simply saying, ask why you're doing it, right? I am annoying because I dare to ask why. And that is all, honestly, at its core, what anarchism is. Why do I do that? Well, I don't know. Well, I'd highly look into it, because if you want to be a Christian, you should be asking that question.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add a little bit to that too. I think that if the philosophy of anarchy, when somebody asks you if you're a Christian or wants to talk to you about your faith, they automatically should know that you follow the philosophy of anarchy. But too far, that's another thing that's been so interesting throughout the 5 years is meeting people when you tell them you're a Christian, then you have to explain what kind of Christian. They're like, yeah, that's the way it was supposed to be. And they may not even be Christians when they say that to you. I got a very good friend of mine. She consider herself agnostic. But she's always been an anarchist. And her and I have become friends over the, past couple of years. And her daughter came to her and her daughters are Christian and an anarchist, and she's been listening to the show. And then she told me the other day, she sent me a text last week or the week before. She goes, I just want to let you know, as of today, I'm a Christian anarchist.
Nice.
I was like, there you go. And I'm trying like hell to get her on the show, because when you go from agnostic to Christian, agnostic anarchist to Christian anarchist, man, if you knew the conversations her and I have had in the past. And then she followed that text up to, she goes, listen, I've always loved Jesus and the teaching of Jesus. She goes, but there's the religion, the church side of that ruins it for me. And I understand that, because a lot of us understand that. I don't spend a lot of time in churches. I haven't been to church in probably 2 years now, but she's going to church. She's checking out churches, and I'm encouraging her, but man, I'm trying to she goes, let me get my thoughts together and I'll come on the show and talk about it. I just think it'd be a fantastic conversation, because knowing her the way I know her and the fact that she's now a Christian anarchist, dude, I was pumping my fist, man. She texted me that while I was at work, and I needed to be focusing on what I was doing at work, and all I could think about is what she just sent me. So it was really cool.
Dude,
and that's why we do what we do, for that one person.
And I'm chuckling when I'm seeing people posting like Aldous Huxley quotes. I'm like, you're aware that his brother is known as the father of transhumanism, right? Stuff that leads into like the 666 whatnots. And they're like, huh? And you look into their grandfather, he was nicknamed Darwin's bulldog. He's the one that coined the term agnostic. I was digging into the etymology, and again, Gnostic, we already know, what that means. But then I was digging into the etymology of A, and sometimes it means eyes. And then when I put agnostic together, it basically means no sight or no eyes. I was going, isn't that kind of interesting? Is that God gives us creation to see to kind of come to our conclusion that there is a God. Something had to put all this together. And agnostic is going, what creation? I don't see anything. But then to come all the way around to being a Christian anarchist, dude, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep bugging her about it too until I get her on the show. She's not getting off easy on this one because there was a period of time that her and I didn't speak because she got so mad at me about something, and we kind of she came back and apologized later, maybe a year or so later, and now it's just a very cool story, and I hope I can get her on the show to talk about it.
Dude, there's a gal on Instagram. She's asking why is there a reason blah blah you stopped on following me? I said yeah. I said everything you post is statism. Like you're posting about this thing with China. You're posting about this thing. I says, but you don't talk about Israel. You don't talk about this. And they come to find our company saying that you can't talk about that. I said yeah, but it's just kind of depressing because that's all you talk about. It's not real. And so I'm seeing ... Okay, this is gonna be a long message. ... I'm like, gosh, it's been like 3 to 5 minutes. I keep glancing over. Finally, something comes through. It's a small little thing, and it says, "This is my third time attempting to answer this, but I think you've convicted me." And I was like, "Really? Progress?" Because I was like, "I don't care. I'm gonna say it because I know it sounds mean, but it's as you just said. I'm going to stand my ground and say my truth because I can't compromise that, right? I'm going to say, honestly, that's what it hurts. As you said, seeing all this online, I'm going, how do you call yourself a Christian at the same time? And then to get back, he convicted me. I was like, okay, maybe I planted a seed. Lord, please continue to water that because this is what I would like to see is people who are still supporting the system or they're supporting things of this world. They start actually coming to be a Christian and being like, you know what? This is where I was, and now this is who I am, which is anarchy, individualism.
Yeah. It's those small victories that keep us going. You know what I'm saying? It's just we can get beat down for a long time with what we're doing, people talking back or pushing back, and then all of a sudden something like that comes up, and it just changes your perspective again. It brings you back,
And people would be surprised, dude. It's just literally stand by your guns and like we watch all these westerns, right? That's what it is to stand up for Christ.
Yeah.
I don't care if I'm outnumbered. I have to be the good guy. I have to stand up because I'm the only one in the room that's going to stand up against evil. But too many people are saying, no, somebody else be the hero. Or like it's like David Goliath. Somebody else go fight him. I'll do it. You're a shepherd boy. Why are you volunteering your services? Are you crazy? We got armor and stuff like that. I don't need that. I just need a stone. Huh? That's Christianity, dude. 100 to 1 odds, but you're still going to do it because Christ is stronger than anything. Greater is he that is within you than he that is of the world. So, Craig, we're on about an hour and a half mark. If you want to do any plug-in with your salsa, your website, any recent episodes of particular that you'd like to throw out a little bit of an endorsement towards or click on this quickly?
We've got the salsa. We'll just start there. I've got a salsa that I've been making. We've got a website where you can badromansalsa.com. Right now, I've got 8 different types. Going to have 9 here soon. I finally got the peppers I needed for it. Hopefully, that's all I'm making is just 9 different ones because it's turned into a thing. It's turned into a part-time job. But the website for the show is thebadroman.com. You can go there and you can even get to the salsa from there, but you can find all of our content there. You can find our show on any podcatcher. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find the Bad Roman. As far as shows coming up, I don't know when you plan on releasing this, but
Couple days.
So the next episode we got coming up is what I did with Corey Ellerby. We talked about anarchy, agorism, and gardening because I've started learning how to grow my own peppers, for the salsa and stuff because it's going to save the customer money and in the long run. And pretty cool conversation. Show after that, we've got something coming up with his name is ANCAP Tim. He's got a new album out. It's all about voluntarism and anarchy, and he's got a song on there called No King But Christ. He goes through all this voluntarism and stuff, and the very end of this album is the last song is No King But Christ. And I asked him if that was intentional. He said absolutely. So it's a couple really cool conversations coming up. Check that out. But like I said, we've got 140 other episodes that you can go check out as well.
Nice. Well, Craig, as always, It's a blessing to talk to you. As I said, it's nice to talk to like-minded people. I think that's what people do not understand is the ecclesia aspect of the assembly. Where two or more are gathered, there I am in their midst. And in Amos 3:3, how can two, not go walk together unless they be of the same mind?
Yeah.
I truly appreciate you coming on here and being who you are and having the ministry that you have, because it's a little bit more simplistic as opposed to the heavy stuff that I cover. But I think the simplicity is ultimately the first stepping stones. And I know you say it's kind of extreme, but it's like, no, anarchy is the first step before you can even understand my stuff. Because if you can't even deny the world, you're not going to understand any of the stuff that I talk about, which is going even more. Whoa, this is heavy. Yeah, it gets heavier and heavier into the deep end. And anarchy is the first step. It's a big step. Once you start doing it, you start appreciating the Bible and your Christian walk a little bit more. And I also just will throw this in, and then we'll wrap it up. I was reading, again, Demanding the Impossible, I think it's David Marshall, and he was talking about the ecclesia, and basically they would rotate the like 300, 500 leaders. Like, it wouldn't be a consistent thing. They just would rotate them constantly. But in order to be respected in the democracy or the agora, you had to speak up in order to have a place of citizenship. Now, I am not advocating that we be like the other nations, but I do think there's a little bit of that clause that I was thinking, because it's called ecclesia when they use the word. As a Christian, if you want to be part of the heavenly body of Christ, you got to stand up, right? You got to start speaking your piece, speaking your mind, and proclaiming the gospel. Now, it's not going to be easy, but the Bible did say that he would send the Holy Spirit to give you the words you need to say at the time that it is needed, right? And I'll close with this, because last time I did, a little phrase to help walk away with. If you want to stand out, you first need to stand up. This is the Manna Daily Podcast. You can find me on Spotify, Rumble, YouTube, and Patreon. And as always, thank you for tuning in to listening. And we will catch you on the next one.